I was completely stunned when my husband, Jonathan, unexpectedly suggested that I return to my parents' house, even though they were already living with us. His sudden announcement left me in disbelief. However, he appeared to think he was being perfectly reasonable. He bluntly questioned, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue with me. I'm okay with divorcing you if you do." His recent demeanor had been cold and unapproachable, and I had my own issues with him. Although I had contemplated divorce myself, it felt unjust for him to force me out of our home. I thought to myself, I'm the one paying $3,200 for our living expenses. Does he even recognize that? As I stood there, still processing what he said, he became increasingly irritated and ordered, "Leave this house now. My parents won't feel comfortable with you here." I couldn't comprehend why I had to go, but I ultimately agreed. "All right, I'll take all my things with me." As soon as I conceded, he seemed satisfied and abruptly stated, "Then do it." Before turning away, without delay, I contacted a shop to sell my possessions. "My name is Betty, and I live with Jonathan, who is 3 years older than me. We met through mutual friends, and our initial casual encounter evolved into spending an entire day together." Jonathan shared his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was captivated by his rich voice. I've always had a fondness for soothing tones. It seemed he felt the same connection as we exchanged numbers and arranged more outings. Before we knew it, we found ourselves in a relationship almost effortlessly, without ever officially discussing it. I had just graduated from college when we met. After graduation, I started working and dating someone who had a bit more life experience, which was exciting. My friend Laura had some concerns about our 3-year age difference, but I reassured her it wasn't an issue. I genuinely liked Jonathan and felt his affection in return, so I had no worries. Eventually, Laura came around, trusting my judgment. Jonathan and I had been together for 2 years when he brought up the idea of marriage. I had already talked to my parents about him, including his age, and they were eager to meet him, holding high hopes for our future. I often wondered when he would propose, and it ended up happening during one of his regular visits to my apartment. We were simply lounging around and enjoying each other's company, not the most romantic setting, but very much in line with Jonathan's style, and I was perfectly fine with it. When he popped the question, I casually responded, "Sure, let's get married." Perhaps we both approached the situation with a laid-back attitude. After the proposal, we visited each other's families. However, I didn't quite connect with Jonathan's family. When we arrived at his parents' house, it was filled with decor that attempted to exude a sense of old-world luxury but felt quite fake. His parents were dressed in expensive clothing and adorned with flashy jewelry, giving off an air of trying too hard to seem wealthy. Our tastes and values appeared to be worlds apart, and I doubted we would hit it off during the visit. Jonathan's mother even made a hurtful comment about my appearance, which stung. I was taken aback by the behavior of the family of the man I planned to marry. Still, I reminded myself that I was committing to Jonathan, not his family. As we prepared for our wedding, I reassured myself that even if I didn't particularly enjoy his parents' company, I wouldn't have to spend much time with them. With that thought, I decided not to let it bother me too much. After our wedding, as we settled into our new condo, I noticed that Jonathan seemed distracted. One day, he suddenly asked, "Hey, who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" Considering there were several guests in blue, I couldn't immediately remember whom he meant. "Which woman in a blue dress?" I asked, trying to recall. "You know, the one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Are you talking about Laura?" I realized that Laura had worn a blue dress. "Yes, that's her," Jonathan replied, his tone hinting at some unease. "What's wrong with Laura?" I asked, puzzled by his concern. "Oh, it's nothing major," he dismissed. "The other day, I thought I saw someone who looked like her while I was on my way to work. That reminded me she was your best friend who spoke at our wedding." I found Jonathan's sudden interest in Laura a bit strange and his flustered response puzzling, but before I could dig deeper, he laughed it off and retreated to his room. Not long after our conversation, Laura called me, brimming with excitement. "Listen, Betty, my boyfriend is coming back to Canada next year," she exclaimed. Laura and her boyfriend had been dating since childhood, having known each other for years. He had moved away during middle school, but they kept in touch through letters and eventually reconnected in high school when he expressed his feelings for her. I've always enjoyed hearing Laura's romantic stories. Despite her boyfriend working at an international branch for several years, they managed to maintain their strong connection. "So, do you think he might propose once he's back?" she wondered eagerly. And then you two will get married, I teased, half joking. Laura laughed and replied, "Oh, Betty, you always jump to conclusions. Just make sure to invite me to the wedding." I promised to deliver another emotional speech at your wedding, but after the lovely one you gave at mine, I need you to keep the standard reasonable. Let's not set expectations too high. We both laughed, sipping our tea, relishing the comfort and trust that flowed effortlessly between us. We had always been there for one another, ready to lend an ear whenever either of us encountered challenges. Around this time, I began to notice shifts in Jonathan's schedule. He started coming home later and later. "Working late again tonight?" I inquired one evening. "Yeah, what, you think I shouldn't be working?" he shot back. Even after we tied the knot, Jonathan was determined to pursue his dream of becoming a voiceover artist. He was committed, balancing part-time jobs to pay for his voice training classes. Sadly, all the income he earned went directly toward these lessons, leaving me to manage all our household expenses. This made it tough for us to save any money together. As time went on, it became increasingly clear that Jonathan wasn't prepared to compromise his dreams for our financial well-being. My worries mounted as he clocked in long hours at his part-time job, which only added to our financial difficulties. "Hey, don't you think you've been working too hard lately? They shouldn't be piling on so much overtime, even for a part-time role," I commented one day. "I told you I'm fine. More money is always a plus. Just keep your thoughts to yourself," he retorted sharply. At that point, Jonathan had become more distant, often avoiding using my name in conversation. Since we got married, he had started addressing me simply as you. I had anticipated more warmth in his tone, but his words were frequently harsh. His once soothing voice had turned abrasive, and his drinking had noticeably escalated. Sometimes, his voice even sounded hoarse, which was alarming for someone pursuing a career in voice acting. Despite this, he showed little interest in discussing his health and increasingly avoided talking to me. Eventually, he began to ignore me entirely, even when we were together in the same space. During these difficult times, Laura reached out to me. She said she had something significant to discuss, so I suggested we meet. Given my concerns, I was eager for a chat. We decided to rendezvous at a cafe that had a more private seating arrangement. Laura selected our booth carefully, choosing a spot where we could easily see the counter and staff from the entrance. "Did you choose this particular room on purpose?" I asked, noticing her cautious demeanor. "Yes," she confirmed. "I wanted a place where the staff could see if anyone suspicious was lurking outside." "A suspicious person? Is that connected to what you wanted to talk about?" I inquired, putting the pieces together. Laura nodded, her face tense. She explained that she felt as though someone had been following her since she left her job about a month ago, and now she sensed she was being watched on her days off. The reason for selecting a room with a clear view was that she feared the person stalking her might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. "Have you contacted the police about it?" I asked, my concern growing. "I tried, but without any direct evidence, they can't do much," she replied with a sigh. "What about your boyfriend? Isn't he coming back next month?" I asked, hoping she had someone to rely on. "I thought about talking to him too, but I wanted to discuss it with you first, someone I trust," she explained. I understood her need for immediate support. Laura hadn't been able to get a clear look at her stalker, making the situation even more frightening. She was too scared to determine whether her follower was a man or a woman. I decided to keep an eye out from a distance to try and identify who was following her. During this time, I was grappling with my troubled relationship with Jonathan and found it hard to express my feelings. However, as I observed the situation, I made a shocking discovery. The individual trailing Laura was none other than my husband, Jonathan. He often claimed he had to work late, but I noticed that after his shifts, he would linger near Laura's workplace, following her as she departed. I was in disbelief to learn that the person instilling fear in my best friend was my husband. Watching Jonathan shadowing Laura with a creepy, unsettling grin drastically altered my view of the man I had married. The man I once loved now felt like a stranger, and the love I thought was eternal had turned icy. I knew I had to reveal the truth to Laura. I urged Laura to take action right away for her own safety. With help from her coworkers, she arranged for a driver to take her straight from the underground parking garage to her new home. We took these steps to make sure she felt secure. As Laura made her escape, Jonathan's irritation escalated. Eventually, he couldn't hold back his anger any longer. "My parents are moving in here, so you need to return to your parents' house," he demanded one day, catching me off guard with his unreasonable request. If you have an issue with that, I'm perfectly fine with getting a divorce, he threatened, his temper flaring. Though I had my own grievances and had thought about divorce before, the reality of our crumbling relationship hit me hard at that moment. I couldn't believe Jonathan thought he could just kick me out of our home. I was the one paying $3,200 for our monthly expenses. Did he even remember that? I gave him a dubious look, but he just snapped, "Just get out. My parents can't move in while you're still here. Why do I have to leave? I don't get it." Despite feeling confused and frustrated, I replied calmly, "Fine, I'll take everything I bought with me." Hearing my agreement, Jonathan impatiently told me to hurry and walked away. I quickly contacted a local buyback service, and they arrived at our apartment the next day. At first, Jonathan grinned, thinking I was just packing up to leave, but his smile faded into shock as he watched the workers assess all our furniture and appliances. Once they finished, a staff member handed me a quote, stating, "The total value is $299,000. I swiftly signed off, saying, "All right, sell it all." That's when Jonathan snapped back to reality, grabbing my arm. "Why are you selling everything? My parents are moving in. How can they do that without any furniture?" I shook off his grip and replied, "What do you mean? When we got married, you said you were broke because of your acting classes. You asked me to cover the rent, furniture, and living costs. I never realized you were this broke. I feel deceived. Remember the $3,200 I've been paying each month? From now on, you'll have to cover that, and with your parents moving in, I bet it'll be even higher." Jonathan went pale as he grasped the seriousness of the situation. He quickly tried to regain his composure. "You thought I'd cancel the divorce just because of money? Who do you think you are? I've already gotten close to a rich woman," he claimed, trying to appear unaffected. But I recalled how Jonathan had been following Laura recently. If he considered that being close, his judgment was deeply flawed. Laura, who came from a wealthy family, her grandfather a businessman and her father the heir, never flaunted her wealth. She lived like me and our friends, not defined by her family's money. It seemed Jonathan had learned of Laura's background and viewed her as a more suitable partner, thinking that wealth made one person better than another. This idea infuriated me, but I knew Laura would never be interested in Jonathan. She had been with her high school boyfriend for years, and he was set to return soon with plans to propose. When I mentioned that Laura felt uncomfortable because someone had been stalking her, Jonathan was surprised to hear that she found him creepy and that they weren't close. "I always walked Laura home," he protested. "You're lucky I didn't call the police," I shot back. "But I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been away. She chose me over someone she doesn't know." Jonathan tried to rationalize his misunderstanding of their relationship. "They've been exchanging letters since childhood and talk nearly every day. And unlike you, who has only worked part-time, her boyfriend is successful. Even her dad likes him," I pointed out. Jonathan looked profoundly sad as I laid out the truth. It was clear that his fantasies about a relationship with Laura were just that, fantasies, and reality was hitting him hard. As the workers began taking our belongings, he seemed somewhat relieved. "I guess you're all I've got now. You'll always support my dream of being a voiceover artist, right?" he asked, attempting to seem unfazed. I met his gaze with cold determination. "Sorry, I've already started the divorce process. From now on, we should only communicate through our lawyers," I stated firmly. Jonathan, perhaps believing I still had feelings for him, clung to me. "Don't say that. Haven't we been getting along?" "Getting along? Ever since you found out my best friend Laura is wealthy, you've become distant and started spending time with her right after our wedding." I realized that I had made a mistake. Jonathan broke down, tears streaming down his face. Despite being older, his childish sobbing only made him seem more unappealing to me. I couldn't bear to be around him any longer. "Enough," I snapped. "I've also informed your Uncle Unli about the divorce. You know he's a tough man. Well, he's decided you'll work for him, which means I can no longer support your dream of being a voiceover artist. You barely practice as it is. It's time to accept reality and stay away from Laura, or I'll call the police." With those final words, I left, determined not to look back. For now, I would stay with my parents, although I considered moving closer to my workplace if I found a suitable place. Meanwhile, Jonathan ended up working for his uncle, just as I had predicted. His parents, who had hoped to rely on him financially after his marriage to Laura, also moved in with him, all working for his uncle. It seems that taking advantage of others was a family trait. I felt relieved to escape that toxic situation. Age wasn't the primary concern, but I vowed to be more careful when choosing my next partner. On a brighter note, after sorting things out with Jonathan, Laura invited me to her wedding. She introduced me to her long-term boyfriend, and I genuinely wished them all the happiness in the world. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next video, and stay stunned.